dear ones. You're listening to the What God Is Not podcast with Father Michael O'Loughlin and Mother Natalia.
Hey friends, thanks for listening. This is Mother Natalia. Today's episode is kind of Father Michael's, but he really passes it off to his friends and my friends, Libby and Sandy. Sandy and I just met. She's really great. You're going to love her. And they are sharing their experiences as in really embracing the full Byzantine fast for the first couple of times as Roman Catholics. They talk about the balance between personalization in our fasting and also kind of universal standards and where to fall there. They talk about the difference between receiving and grasping and how fasting helps us with that. You'll also get some references to Dr. Dre again, Anderson .Paak again. Is that the right name? I meant to ask beforehand. Yes. Okay, Anderson .Paak, Kanye West, and most importantly, Michael Dorn. So if you are a #Banter hater, I really wouldn't skip anything because if you do, you're going to miss the introductions. But if you do, I don't know, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, there was intros and stuff. All right. Love you guys.
Christ is risen.
Indeed, he is risen.
Hello, ladies.
So many ladies.
I have three of my favorite spiritual daughters with me today.
Aww. Very different responses.
So, who you heard was, and I was going to ask you beforehand, but I thought, you know what? People love it when I just totally mess things up on this podcast. It's like part of it. So I'm going to try to introduce the two of you, Libby and Sandy.
Ooh.
I know. And this may be horribly embarrassing for me because I think I know where you're from, where you went to school, what you're doing with your lives. I should, as your spiritual father, but I'm going to try it anyway. So on my left, nobody can see, I guess they don't care, but is Elizabeth Reichert. We call her Libby. She born and raised in Oklahoma, Kansas. Yes. Kansas, one of those Midwestern states. Great start, exactly. I was going to say you're not, because like Kansas is kind of a Midwestern and Oklahoma is kind of a southern state, right?
Yeah, a little more southern.
Okay, so born and raised in Kansas, good Catholic family, raised in the faith. Went to school she is a theologian. She has a doctorate in moral theology. So she went to school Steubenville and somewhere in New York. Fordham, and somewhere in Spain.
Navarra.
And Santa Croce in Rome.
Yes.
Okay. So all the school, and she is a world traveler in 3 days. What's today? Thursday? In 3 days, she's flying to France and Turkey to spend her summer there.
And England
to spend her summer there. She is an avid rock climber and obviously a theologian, and she has friends that have become nuns, and so she's visiting them. What are you doing in England?
In England, I'm going to a conference at Oxford on Christology.
Right. She's giving a talk at Oxford. She's kind of a big deal. And then on what? On Christology?
Yeah.
Okay, on Christology. And by the way, I think both of these ladies, I hope you're going to hear from again, dear listeners, because there's a lot going on in both their lives. And I think what they do, how they think, how they live their life could be very helpful. But this is a very specific topic we'll get to in a moment. And yes, so she teaches at St. John's Seminary in Camarillo, and she's teaching the future priests of the Archdiocese of Los Angeles and Southern California.
Basically all of the Southwest.
All the Southwest, okay. Mm-hmm. Teaching, teaching, no big deal, exactly. all of those, especially teaching them moral theology. I think I can say with confidence that she is probably the favorite professor of the entire seminary. and she's not even going to deny it because she knows it's true. And it's I hear from the seminarians as well that they love her as a human, as a person as a woman, as a theologian, as a formator in a sense. I know there's a distinguishment there, but you're an instructor, professor there. And she's a parishioner at the Proto-Cathedral of St. Mary here in Los Angeles. Also very involved in our new outreach in Santa Paula, California, since we just bought a building. We closed on it on Tuesday, so 2 days ago. And so, yeah, we're now thinking of a name, et cetera. But anyway, there's a lot going on in Southern California right now, and Libby's a part of a lot of that. So please keep her in prayers. On my right is Sandy Barba. Sandy, born and raised Valley girl, born and raised in Burbank, California, while also spending a few months a year down in Mexico. What part of Mexico?
Half a year, basically.
Half the year.
Yeah.
And Guadalajara?
Close by, Tepatitlan.
Okay. In Mexico. So she lives in Santa Barbara. She went to school at UC Santa Barbara. So, University of California, Santa Barbara. And then when she graduated, she became a folks missionary, which I have a lot of in my family. And she served as folks missionary in San Diego and Denver, Colorado, at the School of Mines.
That's
where is
not
San
in
Diego?
Denver.
Yeah.
Yeah. Golden, Colorado. West Denver is what I tell people.
Yeah.
And sorry, what was your name?
Which school did you mission at in San Diego?
San Diego State.
San Diego State.
And first was Oregon, too.
Oh, okay.
Good old Eugene, Oregon.
Okay. And School of Mines was where Mother Natalia went, but they miss each other by 5 years.
Yeah.
I think.
6
Mother's
years.
old, and I'm older. Okay. And she studied math. I did not, obviously.
I did not study math.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of math, but
You studied left brain stuff.
There you go.
I did not.
Okay.
Obviously.
That's fair.
And then I met Sandy at the social after Mass. For those of you that are Catholic stuff listeners, Sandy would come to every once in a while. I think we only hung out once or twice, but to a couple of my Masses when I was doing Roman Catholic Mass at Joan of Arc, Father Nathan Gobel's parish where I lived. And we had donuts. What do you always say when we talk about that?
Donies with Joni.
Donies
they
with
were
Joni.
Friendship Thursdays, but we called them Donies with Joni.
Donies with
On
Joni.
Thursdays.
I don't
And
get
Joni
it.
was a human, right?
Sorry?
Joni was a person who served donuts. Is that what it was?
No. Joan of Arc. Joni. It was Donies with
I've spent
Joni.
like the past 3 years thinking there was like a person, Joni, that used to serve donuts. And I'm like, did I forget a name? Joan of Arc. That makes sense. Joan of Arc Parish.
That's really amazing,
And-
actually.
And she is currently, she's worked, when I met you here, you were working at the Reagan Ranch.
Yeah.
At the Reagan Ranch, which I've still never been to.
Jesus and Ronald Reagan.
Yeah. and then now she works at St.
Julie Billiard.
in Thousand Oaks, California. And she's a parishioner at the Outreach up in now Santa Paula. And she is going to be one of our 2 fluent Spanish speakers that evangelize the neighborhood. Because we bought the church off of a Spanish-speaking community. So we want to jump in right away. I've already asked her, so this is now even more commitment, Sandy, since I'm saying this, that she's going to hopefully lead Bible studies, Spanish-speaking Bible studies in our neighborhood in Santa
Very
Paula
cool.
because our church is in a very Spanish-speaking neighborhood, so we want to make sure that we provide for the community in which we were put. It's pretty obvious that our Lord, in the time He did, gave us this church in this neighborhood, in this part of Ventura County, which is where Outreach is, and all the other things that our Lord has been asking us to do. So, yeah, both these ladies, my spiritual daughters for a while, and both are very involved in parish life, and that is why I wanted to have them on this podcast.
Great. Welcome, Libby. Welcome, Sandy.
Just so you have a timing for the banter, I don't think we should have any banter this time, actually, just because I introduced them right away.
I feel like
We
that
normally-
counted as banter.
Yeah, I think it counted better, but can I just want to? I want to. I don't think I said this to you, ladies. I want to banter for one moment about Dr. Dre.
Oh my gosh.
Actually,
Why?
not about Dr. Dre at all. It's not about Dr.
Anderson
Dre at all.
Paak?
No, it's not about Anderson Paak either. See, so this is where we're going with this. Mother does not care. So Sandy is the one who took the photo of me and Anderson Paak. She does not care at all.
I don't care
She took
even
the
a little
photo
bit.
that we've used for our image. Sorry, did we pay you for that?
No, I don't care. I don't need to pay. But you used it?
We did use it. We used it on our for one of our podcasts. Anyway, so Mother does not care, but then she did care all of a sudden.
Oh, I totally care. I know where you're going with this.
So what happened is Sandy and I think I've told the story. I heard my first time there, I was at Taisho with a friend, and that was when I met Dr. Dre, or looked at Dr. Dre. He looked at me for a second. On my first time at Taisho, and then I heard that time that Anderson .Paak came as well, and I was much more interested in Anderson .Paak. Sorry, Dr. Dre, if you listen.
Totally does.
And so then I came in later on, and Figs, who's my friend, had told me she was going to alert me if Anderson .Paak was ever there. Sandy and I show up randomly to Taisho, and Figs comes over with 4 shot glasses and sake, so that that Sandy, me, Figs, and Anderson .Paak can have shots. And that's exactly what happened. And Mother does not care at all.
Not even a little bit.
But so then Andrew Whaley and I,
this is so much cooler.
who you all know, Andrew Whaley and I walk in.
Do you guys know about this? Do they know?
No.
I don't think they do.
Just wait.
I don't think they do.
Just wait.
Okay. So Whaley and I walk into Taisho, and there's like a lot of spots at the bar, which is rare. Mm-hmm. And there's this guy sitting right on the corner. And so we sit next to him, and Whaley sits right next to him. I sit next to Whaley, and he's kind of around the corner, so we have a nice place to talk. So Whaley's telling horribly corny jokes about polar bears and big paws and things like this. And this guy's just not laughing at all. So Andrew Whaley's like, he tells the bartender anyway. And both of us, at some point, we looked at each other like, who is that guy? We recognize this guy from somewhere, which happens all the time in LA, and which happens all the time at this restaurant. This must be someone who we've seen somewhere on TV. But neither of us say anything. Neither of us have any idea. It's this older guy, graying beard, and we're like, well, maybe when he was younger, he did something we would have seen. So then we leave, and we have our nightcap back at the convent where we live. Actually, you live at a convent too, Sandy.
This is true.
Former convent. Well, I live at a former convent as well, and Andrew Whaley's currently in my guest room. So then Whaley says, I think he says, I'm going to look up and see who that is, because oftentimes people will on Instagram, they like post that they were at Taisho, and then you can see who they are. So Whaley's looking, goes, I think if I know who that is, I think Mother Natalia is going to freak out. Absolutely going to freak out. So all of a sudden,
Maddie was in the car with me when he texted, by the way.
Is this like a famous physicist or something?
No.
Close.
Oh, my.
Actually, can you guess? Someone who's been on TV. Can you even guess the show?
No.
Do you know Mother Natalia at all? If I said one show, there's one show that.
Hold on. Look at my backpack.
I was going to say.
Oh, Star Trek.
So all listeners are screaming right now into their radios, Star Trek. So it is, he introduces himself as Michael, and it is Michael Dorn who plays Worf.
They sat next to Worf. That is way cooler than Dr. Dre or
You totally went to mine.
Hack. So cool.
That's hilarious. So then she just sends me a text. I didn't know that Whaley told her. So she sends me a text and says, I have so much more respect for you now. Something like that, right? In a text, because I sat next to Worf. And that's why she respects me more. So then I sent since I plead ignorance about Star Trek all the time, and I love Star Wars, I sent a picture of Lando Calrissian to her, because they're both the token black guys from both of those shows.
I did not make that connection. I didn't realize that's why you did it. I just knew that you were doing Star Wars, and I was like, come on.
Okay. So I sent a picture of Lando Calrissian, like kind of doing this like nod, like thank you type thing. And then she just like, she put like, I hate you or something like that.
I did not.
It wasn't that. She didn't say I hate you.
I might have said you're the worst or something.
That's okay. That's probably it. It's probably the worst. Anyway, so now Mother actually cares when we run into celebrities here in Los Angeles.
Yeah. I mean,
or at least.
Here's the thing. I'm not even like, it's not even that exciting to me that it was Michael Dorn. It would have been, it's the fact that Michael Dorn was in such close proximity to Patrick Stewart and Brent Spiner. Like if you had met Data or Jean-Luc Picard, I would have just...
I didn't know.
I would have moved
Spiner
to LA.
was, so now I know.
Brent Spiner is Data.
I would have moved to LA.
How do we make that happen then?
I know, right? Exactly. we'll work on this. Next time, if I become good friends with Worf, I'm just going to call him Worf. That'll be so offensive to him, actually, if I just call him Worf.
Yes.
Michael. His name is Michael.
No, you have to totally listen. You need to totally play it off. If you see him again, like you can't fangirl over him, because then he's just going to be like, oh, this guy's just like every other fangirl. That was weird. Anyways, you need to just pretend like you still don't know. And then at some point when you're talking to him, if he's like, oh, yeah, I was on this show, and then like, oh, what show? And he says, oh, Star Trek. And you're like, oh, I'm not really into Star Trek, but I know a nun who is obsessed with Star Trek. And then he'll take a picture, and then he'll come visit the monastery, and he'll come on Pustinia, and he'll have dinner with us, and we'll go for a walk, and he'll tell me all those stories about Brent Spiner and Patrick Stewart.
So Mother, what happened was I already thought through this. I've prepared, and I thought that's so insincere. So
you can get him to write my life profession letter.
What?
I did. The one I'm supposed to write to her. Actually, sorry. That's not an inside joke for listeners, because they know that I've owed her a letter for 9.5 years.
Something like that, yeah.
And then she's like, you know what I want is a gift for my life profession, just a letter.
I was being totally serious.
It's only been like 2 weeks since her life profession, so I'm not that far behind. But I will. I promise you, I will write a letter. But I thought through it. I was like, I just can't be insincere. I would need to say, like, Michael, I met you. I had no idea who you were, but supposedly my buddy who told the polar bear joke. So this is the polar bear joke that Andrew really likes to tell. So polar bear walks in a bar. I got to get this straight. I got to think through it. And the polar bear says, I'm going to make it really short. He makes it longer. The polar bear says, I'll have a rum and Coke. And the bartender says, why the big pause? And he goes, because I'm a polar bear. He laughed as much. Michael Dorn Worf laughed as much as Mother just laughed, and Sandy just laughed. Libby gave at least a courtesy giggle. So Whaley will be proud of you. But anyway, so I'm going to say, remember the polar bear joke?
I'm only not laughing because I don't get it.
The big pause. Like,
oh, P-A-W-S.
P-A-W-S.
No, that's really funny. I just didn't get it. I thought it had something.
Saying that because it's Whaley.
That is not true. Although he is so funny. No, it's because I was thinking it had something to do with the fact that it's a polar bear versus like a grizzly bear, and I was like, what is polar?
I know. I kind of thought the same thing. I was like, well, do they really have the biggest paws? I don't know. I'm not a biologist. As has been quoted recently. Libby gets it. Okay. So the reason...
Longest banter ever, just so that you could embarrass me for being a nerd. That was the whole point of that banter.
Introducing them wasn't banter. Introducing them was very, very important in the beginning. We did banter in the middle. So the reason why I want these two ladies on is because they so beautifully... this year, for the first time, for both of them.
I don't know if beautiful is the word, Father.
Did we?
You did. It was and beautifully compared to me, for sure. So they decided that they were going to lean in to the Byzantine Great Fast. And they were going to go vegan for the entire Great Fast for the first time ever. And both of them are very, very healthy. And both of them are very, very athletic. And both of them have their lives together, and so they decided to really embrace this in a way that was incredibly inspiring to me. And so we had a text thread going where I would send them pictures of microwaved beans and rice and oatmeal and peanut butter sandwiches, and they would judge me, and then they would send pictures of what they were eating. I think I sent you a couple times a picture of like store-bought ramen that was vegan, like at the ramen place. But they would spend so much time and effort going shopping and spending time cooking these very, very healthy, sometimes more tasty than other vegan meals for themselves because they cook at home. So I would really like ladies to hear just any of your, let's start with Libby, any experiences you have of what that was like going from being a very pious Roman Catholic who fasted from meat on Fridays and had 2 meals on Good Friday and had no meat on Fridays and giving up candy bars or whatever. Totally judging Roman Catholics right now. Sorry.
I know, which you realize is like most of our listeners.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, most of our listeners.
He's doing this very tongue-in-cheek.
Of course.
I don't actually, I've never known what that idiom means, so I don't know if I just used it correctly.
Is that like you?
I think you did.
Okay.
But so, and then feel free, Sandy, to jump in when she's talking. But Libby, like, what were your basic experiences? And by the end of this, I'm going to be asking like anything else you want to say. So we'll get everything that's on your minds. But in the beginning, what were your first experiences of deciding to be obedient to our Byzantine Catholic traditions that aren't even mandates from the bishop, but our Byzantine Catholic traditions of no meat, dairy, wine, or oil for the entire 40 days?
Yeah, so the Great Fast was my second attempt. First attempt at Great Fast, I did the Philip's Fast, but Philip's Fast, at least according to your advice, was, I believe, allowed wine and oil and then mitigated on the weekends, which was a huge help. And even at the end of the Philip's Fast, I needed every day until the Great Fast started because I was so done. I never, ever wanted to do it again. So the Great Fast went slightly better. But if you're asking the question about switching from Roman Catholic practices to Byzantine practices, I've done various fasting practices and given up various things during Lent as a Roman Catholic. And one of the big changes for me was, as a Roman Catholic, there's a lot of personal decision making. Mm-hmm. And there's something beautiful about that, in that you're trying to decide what is going to be good for your soul. Because let's say, I don't know, someone with an eating disorder, right? So like fasting may not be the healthiest thing for them. And so maybe choosing something else is better. And so I like that aspect of personal discernment. But to me, the Byzantine practice gets kind of the best of both worlds, because I felt very much like a child, like I was going to Mother Church, who was going to teach me how to become holy in this liturgical season through these practices. So kind of like almost, I don't know, throwing out the playbook, starting over, and what does the church want to teach me in this season? But then combining that with the regular advice of go to your spiritual father. So this is the ideal, this is the tradition, and go to your spiritual father if you need to make adjustments for your health or for other various reasons. But I really like that then your spiritual father is supposed to know you and help you to discern what would be good for your soul. So you aren't just like, Father, this doesn't work for me, I'm going to propose something else. Like ideally, the spiritual father proposes something. And so that was a big change for me, from like this very personal by yourself decision-making to like learning from the church and then under the guidance of a spiritual father of what's going to be beneficial to your soul.
There are so many there. I mean, obviously the Roman Catholic Church is so massive, and that there are so many memes and guides online, and they all go over social media, like here's the guidelines. And yet within that, of course, there's an understanding of, like even when we were kids, give something up. So make it personal as well as following the guidelines of the church. But in the Byzantine church, what I'm hearing is that there's stricter guidelines that go against our very American way of being able to grocery shop every day or every week, of being able to go buy something new, to try new things, the diversity of foods that we have access to year round, where there's no seasonal foods really, because we ship in food from everywhere. It's a very different situation than it is when these rules were made. But like you said, being obedient to a stricter, that is more restrictive even than they would have experienced hundreds of years ago, because they did not have access to all these things. And I mean, and you guys are both health nuts in a way, if I can call you that. So you think through all these things. So even the access to really healthy things, I would guess that you actually had to kind of eat a little more unhealthy, mm-hmm. even being vegan, than you would normally. Yeah. Sandy, you have something to say about that?
Yeah. You mean going into it, or
just did you eat? Were you frustrated by your inability to eat whatever you thought was best?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It was just, I mean, Libby and I talk about this. We focus a lot on, not entirely focused, but just getting enough protein and eating just well enough so it fuels us throughout our day. And protein, at least complete proteins on a vegan diet, are not abundant. By any means, unless you're going to stuff your face with like tempeh or chickpeas, because soy isn't that great for you. So it was definitely interesting, and there was a lot of pea protein powder, which tastes like chalk, and it's actually quite awful. Mm-hmm. Actually, Libby and I had we joked about kind of our fasting meals and with you as well, actually, about, having like a section or maybe even a guidebook for extra penitential meals. And I definitely had quite a few of those when just trying to find a balance of something that is going to be fueling and good for me, but also adherent to the fast. So, yeah.
I know Sandy and I were talking about this a little bit on the drive up here of, we're people who pay attention to our diet, balancing our macronutrients, getting enough protein. And there's, I think, a balance that you need to strike even outside of the fast between proper virtue and attention to your health, such that then I can better serve the Lord, minister to others that I have, especially like as an educator, I need to have a clear mind. And so my diet contributes to that a lot. And that's why I pay attention to my diet. And so it's not just out of some obsession of like whatever you think the perfect body is, but it allows me to think clearly when I eat more healthy, but to not fall into idolatry of perfect diet, of perfect health. And so it's a kind of hard balance to strike in the fast, because this does change your diet. And I've noticed the effect of like greater sluggishness or a little bit of brain fog that I don't normally have. I have like higher carbs and lower protein in the fast. And so accepting like, when does God want me to love? Like, how does God want me to love him in this? Does he want me to accept the fact that I'm going to be a little bit more tired? I'm not going to think quite as clearly. Or do I go to my spiritual father and say, hey, this isn't working for me. Where can we adjust? What's going to be good for me there?
And I think that's part of the beauty of what you were saying earlier, Libby, as well, of, I'm reading something right now called The Angelic Life, which is a compilation of just like a lot of monastic writings, but it's a very modern compilation of these ancient writings. And so like it's got stuff from the Rule of Pachomius and things like that. And I was just reading either this morning or last night. Father Michael makes fun of me because it's my teeth brushing book, so I read it while I brush my teeth. And it was emphasizing, again, this fact that we're supposed to reveal all of our thoughts to our spiritual father or our spiritual mother. And not only the negative things and the struggles, but just like all of our thoughts, right? And so ideally, if you're doing that with your spiritual father and you're saying even, this is my experience of the sluggishness, they can even help you discern whether or not that needs to, like they can help you discern whether this is something that God wants you to just accept the sluggishness or whether he wants to give some sort of dispensation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Libby and I actually were talking about this a little bit when we think about the fast. And personally, even going into the fast, I was in already, and I think entered more deeply into a place of really just being dependent and allowing myself to be provided for by the Father, and both spiritually as well by my spiritual father. And so getting to lean into that and thinking about, the intention of the fast. And actually, Father Michael, I don't know if maybe you want to share what you shared with me when we talked about entering into the fast and some of the writings of the church fathers and how they described entering into it, because I think that's what sold me initially in jumping in.
One thing I have to recommend, two things that I don't remember. I'm going to tap into like what I probably told you, and then you correct me if I'm wrong. But then there were two books.
You just
Life
sounded
of the
like
World.
the Psalms, by the way. You're like, one thing I'd like to say, two things I say. I've always wondered why they do that in the Psalms. It's like, do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Or in Proverbs and things like that. It's like, two things I cannot stand, three things I abhor. And I'm like, what is, anyways, okay, continue.
It's probably just rhetoric or poetry.
I don't,
but, so I highly recommend Callistos Ware's Lenten Triodion and the introduction to it. That was mind-blowing last year to me. I had read parts of it in seminary. Thank God they had introduced it to us there. But reading that, it gave a lot of the meaning behind the fast in like every way of it, which is what especially contemporary people want. Why? We should be asking why. And it gave a lot of examples. But I think what you're talking about, Sandy, was I read Alexander Schmemann's For the Life of the World. And in the beginning of that, he talks about Adam and Eve in the garden. He talks about the food offered to them. I love how he says, and I've talked about this a little bit on the podcast, but he talks about how along with the command to be fruitful and multiply, which is the command we all know, there's also the command to go and eat. And so he built into us, into our humanity, the need to be co-creators and procreators and to multiply and to tend and care for, but also to overcome the earth, to make sure that we are able to control the rest of creation, including ourselves. But we are also, he says, we are also created hungry. And he takes the very atheist statement, you are what you eat, meaning you're only physical, right? Because what we eat, you guys know this better than I do, although I will be realizing it in the next few years. If you don't eat that well, you are not going to be healthy. And just like you said, Libby, right? It's actually a ministry. Being healthy is a ministry to others as well. We take care of ourselves so that we can be instruments that God intends. But within this, there is within the gift of all the plants except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, within those gifts, we become receivers. What Mother Gabriella just recorded a podcast this morning. She was talking about leisure and how leisure time, when properly understood and properly enacted, is all about being receivers of a gift and then processing those gifts. And Alexander Schmemann says even that what Adam and Eve become, since they return with a blessing, they become priests. They become mediators and sacrificers. They give back to God in this blessing what he's given them. And he's given them the fruits of all the trees and all the plants of the garden. So in that way, then they decide to grasp at the one thing that they are not offered. And that becomes their downfall. And they lose their priesthood in a sense. They lose their ability to return with gratitude and with a blessing to what they receive from God. We, of course, as a ministerial priest, I take the bread and the wine that's offered by the people that originated in the earth, and I offer it back to God, especially like during the Anaphorite, we offer to you your own from your own. So I'm offering the gifts of the people, but now by the grace of the Holy Spirit and God, it has become the body of Christ. So now I don't only offer what the people gave, I offer a person and a God, Jesus Christ, back to God the Father. So there's something about being recipients of what God has given and only participating in what we're invited into. So, and that's why that was mind-blowing this year. I was just talking to Libby about this yesterday. And actually, I'd love for you to explain this a little bit, Libby, as well. But the difference between, and this was only this year, I had never read the beginning of For the Life of the World before, to my shame. But when I heard that, I actually changed my mindset, because Father Nathan and I, my assistant for the next month, before he gets moved, he and I would talk about, he was very much a letter of the law guy, and he would eat all of the fake things like cereal with oat milk, and that's what I would do if I was cheating. I forget what he would do. He'd have various proteins that tasted like the proteins we want to eat. And I just considered that cheating.
You and I used to argue about this all the time.
We would. And now, sorry, you were right, Mother. After all these years.
Sorry, what did you say?
Hashtag, you were right. Because there is when it comes to the church guiding us, through a spiritual father, spiritual mother, or just by the church, there is a certain, we only want to eat what we're offered. And during the Great Fast, that is restricted for our benefit. And it changes, and there's less that we can eat, but we're still only eating things that are vegan, in that sense, to overgeneralize. And so there is a beauty to saying, I am eating, it's the letter of the law, I'm eating only what the church offers me to eat, and in that I have spiritual growth because I'm being obedient. But the other one, and maybe Libby, since we talked about this yesterday, if you could go into a little bit, thank you for kicking that off, Sandy. If you go into a little bit what the other one is about, you already touched on it in this episode, what it means to have a personalized understanding of the sacrifices, small and large, that are offered to us during the Great Fast that help us grow in holiness.
Well, going off of those topics that you just said and of like these imitations, I'd actually love, if I can, to ask Mother Natalia before I share anything, because I'm really interested to know, learning from you and like living in the monastery and doing this in community, because this is something in my experience of the fast, I feel like I'm trying to figure it out alone, which is why our text group and sharing our meal ideas was really good, because I think if you've grown up in a family, you'll gradually be educated in this. And you would probably have go-to meals, just like Roman Catholics have their go-to fish fry or their filet of fish, and you go to McDonald's or whatever it is. And so I didn't grow up with this. And so I'm kind of starting from scratch and figuring it out. And so it's helpful to learn best practices or ideas from other communities, how to live this well. And so I want to see what you've learned in community, especially about this question of imitation food or substitutes, where you have, oat milk, or I have vegan butters that I like as much or more than regular butters, or like the chicken nuggets, or all of these things, the hamburgers that aren't, vegan hamburgers. And so that's clearly like following the letter of the law. It doesn't violate vegan. But what do you do in the monastery as far as like following the spirit of the fast versus the letter of the law and kind of imitation foods?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first of all, the thing that I'll start with before I even touch on that, because I was thinking of it earlier when you were talking, Libby, is, I agree with this concept of like the church gives us this structure, and there is something beautiful about like just taking that on and following that, because I think there are times where we want to do maybe even more, or we want to do something different. We want to personalize it, like you're saying. And I totally see the beauty of that, like you were talking about. But I think that there's something in our Western mindset. I don't mean Western Catholic, I mean Western world. There's something in our Western mindset that's actually probably pretty globalized at this point, of just this individualization and this like, I need to be totally independent and I make my decisions, and so there's such an unwillingness to kind of turn things over to other people, that there's a beauty in doing that with the given structure of the church. And I'm thinking to touch on what it's like as a monastic. One of the other nuns, she's shared very openly, just like, I don't feel like I need to discern with this fast what I'm going to do personally, because like, frankly, what we do as a community is enough. And like, God always purifies and he always purges just through the given structure of the fasting and prayer and almsgiving and all of that. Like, those things are naturally kicked up during fasting periods. And I've shared this multiple times on the podcast, but there's actually a line in our Typicon, which is our rule of life, that we're not allowed to take on additional fasting without getting permission from the hegumena. And I think from our spiritual father, I don't remember, but I typically ask them both if I want to do something. So, because there is something about just trusting that God can act and does act outside of the boundaries that we try to put on him. And so there is something to that. So as far as fasting as a community, it's really interesting, because there is, in part, it's much easier simply because we have the support. And you would think it's easier because like we're all just eating the same thing. But actually in our community, there are a few nuns that have health problems that like they can't do the same fasting. And so they've figured out with Mother and with their spiritual fathers and whatever, what their fast looks like. So, it is interesting to be like, during the Great Fast, and also I'm cooking meat for my sister, or I'm smelling the meat being cooked, or things like that. There's something interesting there. But I would also recommend, what Father Michael said, the Triodian and For the Life of the World, but also anything you can read by John Chrysostom on fasting is very beautiful. Like if you just Google John Chrysostom and fasting, he's got really beautiful things to say about it, because he talks about fasting when you have illness and things like that. But as far as the imitation things, I don't know how to articulate the distinctions, but there are distinctions in the monastery. So, for instance, we don't buy like vegan cheese. We don't get vegan hamburgers. We don't do those kinds of things, but we will make bean burgers at home, or sweet potato burritos, which is a weird thing, but they're actually like pretty delicious. And we will use alternative milks or alternative butters. And yeah, so I don't really know what the distinction there is, but I think it's something like we are not trying to eat things that will taste like their alternative. I guess maybe that's what it is. Like a lot of the vegetarian burgers, they're like striving to taste like a real burger. And that's not really what we do. And same thing with like cheese. Like we'll make vegan mac and cheese things with like a cashew base, but like it doesn't taste like real mac and cheese, right? And it's not really going for that. But I don't know. Yeah.
I'd love to hear from any of you what the spiritual benefit was. Actually, real quick, Sandy, when you asked me that question earlier, were you getting at that you had a spiritual moment because of the giftedness, the idea of shmemin?
Yeah.
Okay, if could you share that?
Sure. I mean, kind of like you explained, that was one of my motivations, I think, to jump into it, because in my own prayer, I was just kind of in this season and really leaning into dependence and trusting in that provision of the Lord. And so your kind of recalling of, our experience of the garden and being provided for was, I think, definitely the catalyst for me to take on the fast in that way. And the experience in itself was very much that. But I think it did reveal a lot on the spiritual side of, what my own relationship with the Father and with the Lord looks like as a provider and in that way. And I guess maybe it could lean into some of those imitation foods or thoughts as well. But Libby and I were just talking about this as well. I talked to you about this, about how I feel like it's kind of like the stages of grief, like as you begin, right? So kind of jumping in, I remember in those first couple of weeks, I was an angry vegan, honestly. I was like, stupid veganism, and yeah, just jumping in and trying to figure out what worked. And especially in those moments where it was hard, I just realized my not tendon, I guess, the desire to just grasp for something simpler and easier when the fast wasn't easy. It's like I had this inclination to just eat cheese. I love cheese, or whatever it might be. And then as it progressed, we sent each other our meals. Some of them were really awful. Some of them were good. And we kind of kept going in that direction. And I think somewhere along the middle, Libby and I recalled to each other through this thread of like, we've gotten so much better at the fast recently. I've realized that I haven't not noticed it, but I've been doing better. And then we stopped and we're like, oh yeah, we should stop caring about food. So like at some point, but then I thought about that in itself, and it was kind of a thought of, did I stop caring about food because I've surrendered to this provision, or was it really just because I kind of gave up? I gave up and feeling like I was going to be eating well, like I was going to be provided for and satisfied. And so in that, I was like, okay, well, now I need to shift again and, figure out how do I actually lean into this deficit or hunger or whatever, and kind of unite that to the Lord. And Libby and I had quite a few conversations about that as well, and some extra penitential meals. Yeah.
What do you think it was? I'm guessing it's a little bit of 80-20, 50-50. What do you think it was between that? Did you? Because I love how you started off the Great Fast, like leaning into you're going to be provided for by God, because what I hear is that you're stepping away from your own control over what you eat, because you study this stuff deeply, and you've stepped away from that, and you trust that through the guidance of the church, and you're going to be provided for. Did that fade? Did you get that back afterwards? Was there an insight into that?
Yeah, no, I think I did get that back, but yeah, it was just kind of. It was this long process. It faded for a little bit where I was just kind of like, oh, I'm just doing this, right? And I think sometimes we fall into the tendency to just go through the motion, and I'm just going to continue to do this. But yeah, I think I just really intentionally, especially in my own prayer and my conversations with you all, thought about how do I lean into this? And I specifically actually have I encountered Jesus a lot in a field of roses. And so there was this very specific prayer, I think, that I remembered that I had when I was a Focus missionary in San Diego. And I remember being a little girl in this garden of roses and kind of running through it and having like pricks on my arms from the thorns. And then encountering the Father, and he kind of picks me up, and I don't say anything about like these pricks because I'm like, oh, I'm with the Father, this is great. And he kind of looks at me and he goes, why didn't you tell me? Because I'm kind of vaguely bleeding everywhere. And I was like, but everything's fine. Everything's good. I'm with you. And he just kind of laughed and he was like, come on, tell me. And very quickly kind of started to heal that. And it was all fine and good, and it was so easy. But I think a lot of times it was in this perspective of, okay, I'm in this fast. I'm allowing myself to be provided for in some way, and that's just good. And I think the Lord very much through that prayer and bringing that back kind of reminded me of there's more I desire to give you. And so I was actually brought back to that prayer moment during the fast where it was like I had all these flowers in my hand, and he was trying to give me more, but I wouldn't release kind of this thought. And so yeah, I don't know, just kind of leaning into that and seeing, what are the ways where I just kind of want to settle here and say this is okay and, we're going to let it be what it is, and where's the Lord pushing me out of that to continue to strive for that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I know Sandy and I, we both experienced a moment of receiving a gift from God when we were about to have a breakdown. We just realized on the car ride here, both of us I was doing better in the Great Fast than I was in Philip's Fast. Like I said, by the end of Philip's Fast, I was so done. And so Great Fast was going better, partly out of apathy and defeat. And it got to March 24th, and I just hit a wall. I was in the refectory or the cafeteria at the seminary, making yet another salad full of like iceberg lettuce, vegetables, no olive oil, so like just vinegar, and then tofu, like uncooked white tofu, and trying to crunch it up enough, like spread it out so you don't really realize you're eating it in every bite just to like be able to stomach it. And I was so done. I was like, I cannot do this another day. I can't have another tofu salad with no dressing. And then I realized that it was March 24th. And that the next day was March 25th, and we had a mitigation of the fast. And it was just like such a gift from God of like right when I was ready to like just like raise the white flag and give up. He gave me a gift. And we talked about, I don't remember what your meal was, Sandy. The first thing I ate on the 25th that was a break of the fast was my roommate and I, we've been making homemade sourdough bread, and I just dipped it in olive oil. And the olive oil was the most amazing thing I've ever had in my life. It was so good. It was such a gift.
Yeah. That's like the greatest mitigation. Like people think it's crazy, but I'm like, oil is what I'm like. It is so exciting to have a salad on the weekend during the fast. Like he let you have oil on the weekends, right? Because that's a thing.
I did not. Excuse news to me, Mother Natalia.
What?
According to our Ruthenian Typicon, it does not say mitigation on Saturdays.
You can have,
wait, but could we on Sundays?
Wait, are you kidding me?
I don't think so. Sorry. I feel very attacked right now. Surrounded and attacked. I need to double check. I'm pretty sure. Check your Typicons. That does not mention any mitigation on the weekends on our Ruthenian Typicon.
okay.
So the Christ the Bridegroom Typicon is more merciful, if you will, in a direct human way.
Yeah, you can't have fish on the weekends. That's only Annunciation and Palm Sunday. But
this is the thing. Our Typicon also does not mandate the strict fast.
Oh, yeah.
So in other words,
so that's probably why there's no mitigation.
Yeah. But it does say mitigation from wine and oil on certain feasts, like Annunciation. So how do I get myself out of this one?
I know.
I'm trying to.
I don't know. I'm just really impressed that they didn't even have oil. I had this experience when I was at my parents' house. There was something like they asked if I could have a certain bread or something like that because it was. Anyways, and I said something about like, yeah, we're not scrupulous about it. Like if we buy a loaf of bread at the store, we don't check all the ingredients to make sure that there's no oil in it or something. And my dad was like, Are you serious? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, I did that for the whole fast. We checked, we wouldn't buy something if it said it had oil in it. And I was like, whoa, you guys are so much holier than me. That's what I'm feeling right now with Libby and Sandy.
Well, and this is something, this idea of like checking the ingredients. I remember Andrew Whaley was sharing the story of seeing two priests, and one of them was eating a cracker, and the other one looked at the box, and he said, but there's oil or there's butter or something in these crackers. And the other priest holds up the cracker, and he's like, it's a cracker. You can eat a cracker during the fast. And so I think that's one attitude. But then if we're talking about these imitation foods, I'm like, if I'm eating vegan butter that I like just as much as regular butter,
Right.
I do feel a little bit more of a responsibility to check the ingredients in the other foods if I'm going to allow some of these imitation foods.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And the other half of this, just to make sure that we bring it up in this context, the other half of this that I leaned into for years in my own embracing of the Great Fast, and that I changed a little bit this year, kind of meditating upon the idea of the giftedness of the Garden of Eden, was just the ability, and we even do this in the fast during the pre-Lenten period, we stop having meat a week before the Great Fast begins, because you ease into it. There's an understanding of our humanity in the aspect of saying, you get rid of all the meat in your house, and you get rid of all the dairy in your house, and you actually feast, have these meat fare, cheese fare leading up to the Great Fast. But the spiritual benefit that I was always looking for was more along the lines of, and I actually loved hearing this from both of you, but what you said, Sandy, about kind of being provided for, that's a level, maybe I should feel too provided for all the time, but that's like that's another level of spiritual growth. It's absolutely beautiful. And it's really good to hear like that realization. It's down to trust, and how much does trust in God affect every aspect of our spiritual life? But mine was always, I want freedom. I want freedom. So I want to be able to, my body in no way directs my behavior. I want ultimate freedom, so that anytime something is my temptation or any sort of choice is presented to me, I have full power in every way to consider the options, to discern and deliberate about how I'm going to proceed in this choice. And so there's obviously parts of my life where I don't feel that that's a thing yet. I do not have freedom. I've told Mother the story, even on this podcast, a couple of times, where I wanted to go out on the 30 to the restaurant one night, because I'm an extrovert and I'm a sanguine. And I sat down in my car and I thought, you know what? I've never actually discerned whether I should go out or not. I just go out because I want to. And so I sat down in my car and in the garage, and I sat there and I was like, Lord, do you want me to go out tonight? Totally expecting it. Yeah, go ahead, son. And he was like, no, don't do it.
And what did you
Stay
do, Father
home.
Michael?
I went out. I told, but see, this is what I mean. It was a total.
I really love it.
I heard our Lord, his voice was like, take it easy. I was like, I'll go back in. I'll get myself a tea. I'll sit down with a book. I'll sit on my porch. I may even light up a cigar. I tried to prepare for the best relaxing evening being home, and I still couldn't do it. I was still like, well, was that really his voice? Or, but actually, I take that back. I pretty much knew it was his voice. The reality is he'll be fine with it. He'll roll his eyes and he'll be like, you're such a slave to this, and then he'll forgive me, and that's my spiritual life.
Where I turn to scrupulosity, Father Michael turns to presumption.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Father Michael told Sandy and I multiple times. He's like, I don't understand why the fast is so difficult. You guys make it too hard. And then every time we would see him, he'd have a glass of alcohol. He'd announce humbly how he broke the fast that day.
Yeah. You tell everybody, he's like, oh yeah, I'm going vegan, or I'm not drinking any wine for 40 days. And then I'd sit with him on the weekend, and there he was with a glass of wine.
Wait, my favorite was on Easter Vigil. And so
yes.
Father announces at the end of Easter Vigil Mass, or liturgy, he says, now, the fast is supposed to go until after Paschal Matins. But if you aren't attending tomorrow morning, you should go ahead and break the fast tonight. So it was almost like a punishment if you're going to the extra liturgy that you had to continue the fast. So he broke the fast in front of all of us after.
He said, oh, but I'm going.
Except you were going.
Cowboy got so mad. No, I wasn't. I was going, but I wasn't celebrating.
Neither was I.
He had to celebrate with our neophyte.
No.
Yes. Well, yeah, I was. Thank you, Libby.
I have a comment actually on, it's a combination of another, a best practice in response to what Libby asked, but also what you're saying, Father Michael, of wanting to have total control as you make any sort of choices, and not wanting your body to rule. And it touches on something that Sandy was talking about. So another best practice is like, this actually started because of the special diets and the special needs at our monastery, but it's proven to be fruitful in so many ways. We have our menus planned out. Like one of the nuns, it's part of her obedience to plan out the menus. And so when we started the Great Fast, we literally had all of our meals planned out for the entire fast, like all of our dinners. And what we actually did was, since it's about 6 weeks, we had 3 weeks worth of dinners planned out. And then on some of and then we were supposed to double them up so that we could freeze it so that the second half we could repeat and just pull things out of the freezer. But I think that there's an added benefit to that of, first of all, like part of the fast, the three, we've talked about this before as well, but the three components, the prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, should all like complement one another. And so the fasting ideally doesn't take more time and energy. It should ideally, once you're like accustomed to it, take less, because then that time and energy can be spent, and cost can be spent like giving more in almsgiving, spending more time in prayer, so on and so forth. And so having the things planned out helped a lot with that, and like not having to think those things through. But the other reason it was beneficial is like if you have certain snacks planned out or certain meals planned out or whatever, then when it comes to the time where you're just like, I'm so hungry that I just need to eat something, I can't function, my brain's not working, I'm not being charitable, that's the time when it's the temptation to just like grab the beef jerky or grab the quick thing or grab the thing that like doesn't actually comply with the fast. So it's helpful to have those things thought through beforehand so that you're not just like controlled by the needs of the body. And the last benefit of that is like planning the meals ahead. There would be many days where I'm like, I'm the cook for today, but I'm not at all in the mood for what it is we're cooking for dinner. But that's what we're having. And there's an additional fast and a beauty to having the choice taken out of it, to having preference taken out of it, of just like, I'm eating what's on the menu, whether or not it's what I desire right now. So anyways, that's one of the best practices, I think, as well, is like go in with your plan of, like, what am I going to eat when I'm suddenly hungry and need a quick fix? 'Cause maybe it's a handful of cashews so that I'm also getting like the protein and some oils, or maybe it's like a piece of avocado toast or something like that, you know?
Yeah. Something I think about, now that you say that, is something I tried to think about, which was planning, but also kind of shifting, because I feel like towards the beginning of the fast, I tried to make the things that I normally eat, but with vegan alternatives. So like I make this oatmeal with like flax, chia, hemp seeds, and I tried using like coconut yogurt and vegan protein powder, and oh my gosh, it was the worst thing I had ever had in my life. I think I texted Libby and I was like, we would rate, you know, like texture, appearance, and this one I was like 0 out of 10. Oh my gosh, this is so bad. Not even my chickens wanted to eat it, and my chickens will eat anything. And so it was just, but I realized, you know, it just wasn't going to work exactly the same. And so being able to plan that, but also not trying to reach for everything that I was used to eating all the time, just trying to shove it into kind of a weird vegan circle, which didn't work.
Yeah, I reflected a lot on the frustration of desire. I think it was during the Philip's fast, I was teaching a course on the passions or the emotions in St. Thomas Aquinas. And it made me think a lot of his reflection on sorrow. So for St. Thomas, the passion of sorrow is not just like sadness, like my boyfriend broke up with me or my uncle died. It's any loss of a good you once had. So it's the feeling you have when you have that. Or it's any frustration of desire. I want the cheeseburger. I can't have it. Therefore, I feel sorrow. And he talks about the goodness of moderate sorrow. And the reason that moderate sorrow is good is because all these things, these good that we have, either a relationship with somebody or the food that we have, these are legitimate goods from God, but they aren't everything. None of these particular goods are God. And it's too easy for us to become content with these goods and to be settled with them or make them into everything. And so whenever these desires are frustrated, or whenever we lose these goods. They're an invitation to seek out that good that satisfies, that infinite, perfect good that is God, or to seek the water that if we drink, we will never again thirst. And so to use all these frustrations of desires that we have with our food. And I notice in myself, one of the temptations was to give myself extra comforts in any other area because of how much I was suffering in the fast. Like, I deserve this because I'm doing the fast, instead of leaning into that sorrow, that discomfort, and using that as an invitation to seek more deeply the heart of Christ and like rest in God.
Yeah, that's huge. And that was one of the other things that I had been working on for years before these new revelations was this, how are these sacrifices and the little rewards, like you said, Libby, the realization of tomorrow's a feast, and I can eat. You're much more attentive to those things, and much more attentive to this liturgical, spiritual aspects of fasting and feasting, and giving and taking. But how is this actually making me more aware of what true sacrifice is and what true joy is, and how, I mean, even somebody said one time, and this was so convicting to me, as you can imagine, they said, if you think a Snickers bar tastes better than a bell pepper, there's something like wrong with you. And it's like, but we become so accustomed to sugars and things like that our bodies just adapt to all those sugars. But I mean, how many people would say, oh, I just love a good bell pepper alone with nothing else on it? Well, yeah, you're healthier than I am, Sandy. But I could just like eating one and like just savoring that taste of that thing. And when we simplify that, I have all these thoughts, Libby, I need to share with you later on. The most recent Catholic Stuff podcast I was listening to today, and it has some, like we were talking yesterday about some aspects of Nietzsche and Kant and Freud. But anyway, but then there was something about how those philosophers' skepticism is a skepticism of natural law, of what God has given us, of those gifts. And so if we and our whole society is following that skepticism. So if we jettison the skepticism of what's already around us, of God's creation, of God's giftedness to us, and therefore, like I'm hearing you say, Thomas says, is an understanding of what sorrow can bring, and a little bit of tension, a little bit of anxiety, along with those rewards, and because that's what growth is. That's, of course, what maturity is. That's what a growth in wisdom is, and an understanding of the truth of the way things are, because we live in a world where the devil's attacking all the time, and we need to be resistant to that. But real quick, we're at an hour right now, but Sandy, Libby, do you guys have any other spiritual insights that you did not talk about yet that you gained in this fast?
Can I say one very quick thing?
Please.
I just wanted to share that I was thinking of this as Libby was speaking. I had just reread this in the Philokalia this morning, that Evagrius talks about gladly sorrow. And so I had a note in the Philokalia that says sorrow is not the same as despondency and despair. But I just thought that was fun. Gladly.
She's got it too.
Twinning.
Same edition of the Filioque, or not the Filioque.
We're not talking about the Filioque.
The Philokalia.
So yes, gladly sorrow. It also reminds me, have either of you, Libby or Sandy, have you read the C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy?
Yes.
It's, who said yes, Libby? Yes.
Yeah.
It's like that scene when we talk about grasping at, particularly at food, but at any, like, and Father Michael talking about the bell pepper and like really just enjoying the taste of the bell pepper makes me think of the scene in Paralandra when he like takes the fruit off the tree and he eats the one fruit and it's just totally nourishing, totally amazing, everything he wants and desires. And then he goes to reach for a second one because of that. And he's just like, I don't need this because Paralandra, like the planet he's on is kind of like, it's before the fall. And so he's just like he's just satisfied with the one that, anyways, that's what it makes me think of.
Right. Any other insights, ladies, that we didn't talk about?
Talk about Kanye West.
Maybe I'll go first and you end on like the best note, right? So one of the other images that I reflected on when Father Nathan gave us the section from the Triodion to read, and I think I was reading Catherine of Siena's dialogues at the same time, is the image of fat souls. And so if I were to like give a one-liner of the fast, it would be that the goal of the fast is not a thin waistline, but a fat soul. Mm-hmm. And so because what happens, I was talking earlier about our desire for these particular goods, and these are indeed good. But you talk about this a lot, Fathers. These goods were made to serve us, and we were made to serve God. But it's too easy for us to begin to serve these goods. I become a slave to my stomach or to my phone or to my sexual desires or whatever these other goods are that God has given us. And so when we give ourselves over to these smaller goods like food or like our cell phone, they're smaller than us. So it's like our soul shrinks around them. But we're made for God, and God is bigger than we are, of course, speaking metaphorically here. And so our soul has to expand in order, like this is part of the process of theosis, is the expansion of the soul. And St. Catherine talks about this goal of creating fat souls, and that fat souls are born out of love, or suffering born with love. And it's like this is a big part of the fast. It's like these frustrations of the desires or the suffering, but to bear them with love in order to have this freedom or this expansion of the soul to open us up to God.
Amen.
Well, you talk about
West.
smart things and not talking about Kanye West, but I mean, before that, one thing that kind of came to mind that we talked about as well is just, leaning into sorrow and specifically in the context of joy, about how every joy we experience is because we faced the chance of sorrow, right? And how it almost comes in that realization of this sorrow was temporary, or, in the anticipation of the resurrection and the anticipation of provision. So being able to lean into that fast in that way. And then obviously the great prophet, Kanye West, no, I'm just kidding, would talk about, I sent it to Libby and Father Michael. I was like, this is the song of the fast, and it is Everything We Need by Kanye West. And some of those words are hilarious. And you kind of made me think about it when you were talking about the tree. But what does he say? He says, what if Eve made apple juice? You gonna do what Adam do, or say, baby, let's put this back on the tree because we have everything we need.
Everything we need.
No. But it is like really this thought of, what this sorrow is, it comes at the greater joy, the joy that we are provided for, the joy that I believe that I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. And it's something that, the Lord desires to give us now. It's the reason that we get to see the resurrection, etc. So to be able to lean into that sorrow too, and anticipation and almost expectant hope, I think was another big thing about saying, like, Jesus, I expect you, and I know that you will come in the midst of this.
And then, of course, with that expectant hope, the reality of we know Pascha's coming. And this year we went big. We'll have to go big again next year with our goats and our beer and all of that.
This is actually really I guess it's only semi-appropriate. I was going to say this is appropriate because it's coming out during the next fasting period, but it's coming out a week before it's over. But still, it's kind of cool. Right?
Oh, I see. For Peter Paul.
Yeah. Isn't this coming out the 22nd, I think? I think so.
You're right, a week before.
Yeah,
because we start new fast June 1st.
Not June 1st.
Wow, that's right.
We don't start June 1st. Okay. Wow. We start 8 days after Pentecost, which is like the 13th
the Monday
or something.
After All Saints. Okay, yes.
So it's pretty short this year. Yeah, so the Apostles' Fast starts 8 days after Pentecost, and it goes until the Feast of Saints Peter and Paul on June 29th. So this year it starts on, I think the 13th is the Monday. Okay. The reason I know this is because my feast day is on a Friday this year, and I wanted to have a cookout at one of the Ukrainian priests' families. I wanted to have a cookout at their house for my feast day, and I was like, "Shoo, it's Friday!" And then Mother Gabriella was like, "It's a fast-free week," because the week after Pentecost, there's no fasting even on Wednesday and Friday. So, and then the fast starts right after that.
Amen.
So,
all right. Well, thank you all. We conclude with prayer intentions. So we ask our listeners to pray for whatever's on our minds. So if you guys want to think of a few prayer intentions, but I do want to say, just vocalize what I think everybody listening knows. your spiritual father's a mess, and I just want to like say that like I'm very proud of all of you that you do very, very well, even with that being the case, and your ability to listen to God and do what He's doing, and really like throw yourselves into these things, and to trust the church, and to trust God, and to trust the process, and all those things. When I'm obviously and very obviously falling very short. So thank you for that witness. That was one of the things I got out of this too.
Our spiritual father is also the best, even though he eats a lot of pizza and rice.
Agreed.
Okay, well, thank you. All right, well, think of your prayer intentions. I'm going to do the spiel. I'm going to do a little bit out of order, Mother, just because I'll do the spiel for what people need to check out, and then to give people a little more time to consider prayer intentions.
Great.
But for our listeners, we are on all the platforms, but I was just checking today. I haven't checked in months, but I was checking your comments and your recommendations on Apple Podcasts, because I know that has a lot to do with how many people get our podcast put in front of them, and especially the way that we evangelize other Christians and make ourselves known to Roman Catholics. I think it's good to get our podcast out there for hopefully humble reasons, not arrogant reasons. So please check us out on those, and like and rank and whatever it is, recommend us and comment on it if you would, especially on Apple Podcasts. We are on Instagram. We are on Facebook. I'm on Twitter at Padre Michael O. We have a Goodreads page where you can see what we're reading and then talk about what you're reading and have discussion with our media team on the Goodreads page. We are also on YouTube, audio only. We have our own Patreon. If you want to support us, just look up What God Is Not on Patreon, and all proceeds go to our nonprofit, Fotina. You can go to fotina.org and see what we're doing and why. 60% goes to evangelization, 20% to the poor, 10% to the church, and 10% to another organization doing something similar to ours. And then is that everything? You can email us at What God Is Not Podcast. You can email Mother Natalia 90% of the time, me 10% of the time, at What God Is Not Podcast at Gmail. Mm-hmm. At Gmail. And so my prayer intention is going to be please pray for Libby's travels. That will be almost done at this point, but she's traveling a lot of different places, sometimes on her own, in places that are not always completely helpful to Christians or women traveling alone. So please, you're not alone at all, are you? Or are you alone?
I am, yeah.
You
Quite
are
a bit in Turkey.
I totally trust you in Turkey, but she's going to be doing a lot of hiking and climbing. So please pray for Libby, especially her protection in her travels, that she comes back to our parish and to be safely. Also, please pray for Sandy as she continues working the grind at this parish and saving souls, doing RCIA, and other education of various people of various ages, and bringing people to Christ as you continue on. Do you have any travels coming up, Sandy?
Oh, man. I think I do. Everything's a flurry. Going to a wedding in Portland, and conference in Arizona, and babysitting.
Well,
and her birthday is tomorrow, which will not be tomorrow for our listeners, but Friday, May 20th. Mark it down.
Pray for that as well, and pray for Mother Natalia as well, of course, as she continues to thrive and be the heart of the church, as well as leading others to the heart of the church, which is truly Christ and His wisdom. So
I also have travels. You were going to say that I'm going to be there. You forgot.
You're going to be... Oh, so Mother...
You asked me beforehand if you had permission to say that.
I thought I was just saying it to the ladies here. I did not mean on the podcast. But okay. I don't remember the dates, Mother. Mother will be in LA for yet another retreat, which will be great to see her. In August 16th... She's not going to have much time for us. We haven't quite figured out when the days are that she will have time for us. But we'll hopefully record at least one recording live. But please pray for Mother's travels as well when she comes to LA for her annual retreat. And I'm honored to be her retreat master yet again, and to just hang out with her as well.
Yes,
and I promise I will try my best not to get COVID this time.
Great. My prayer intention, please pray for everyone who desires to fast, who does struggle with eating disorders, like Libby was talking about. I think that is a really difficult balance, and takes a lot of discernment for them, for their spiritual father, spiritual mother, etc. And so just pray for the grace and for patience and healing and perseverance for people who struggle with eating disorders and desire to fast.
Amen. Ladies.
I want to pray for our parish communities, the Proto-Cathedral, and our outreach. So we have many exciting initiatives going on. Pray for St. John's Seminary, for all the formators, for myself, that I will be a better person, better sister, better mother, better professor and formator to these men. And then by the time this comes out, we will have many newly ordained priests and deacons. So pray for all of our newly ordained priests and deacons in the Southwest. We have a lot of good men.
Amen.
Yay. I want to pray for, I've been gearing up coming this Friday. I work at a Latin Rite parish, so this Friday we will have confirmations. So we'll have about 35 high schoolers confirmed. So yeah, just praying for their openness and their preparation for that time. And also my niece was just baptized a couple of weeks ago. So for her, my friend, I will not say who, actually by this time she will probably have said it, that one of my best friends, Skylar, just had her third baby. And so she's kind of leaning into that transition, which I'm going to go play with one of their kids while another one has a baseball game in a second. And lastly, I found out recently that somebody I know in Colorado, Daniel, passed away in a car accident. It was quite sudden. So just, prayers for the repose of his soul and his family and all those that loved him.
Amen. All right. Love you, Mother.
Love you guys. Sandy, it was so great to meet you. Libby,
It was so nice
great
to meet
see
you.
I hope to see both of you in August.
You bet.
Love you too, ladies. And I will finish with a blessing. May the Lord bless you and keep you, cause his face to shine upon you, have mercy on you. May our Lord direct your steps, and may you know he is. May you respond to his voice. May you desire what is best for you, even if it is hard sometimes. May you grow in mind and soul and body so that holiness becomes more attractive, but also becomes more effective in your life. May our Lord give you and all those who are listening everything that you need, even to the salvation of your soul. May our Lord bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen.